All right, welcome back. It's still Rapidon. Hope you had a great time on sports and Eastern Circle with Daisy and Michael. Now, I did promise you that at about 9 o'clock, I'll be having my guests in the studio. I'll be having a very not so Friday-ish conversation, but a conversation that we should have had when the news first broke out, talking about the removal of Melekari. Some persons blame him for a lot of the woes that we have economically. And you might just be wondering, oh, how does he relate to him? We all know that a lot is hanging on our oil and gas, petroleum sector. A lot is hanging. In fact, some persons have blamed their inability to move around to the high price of, petroleum products. And we want to look at it from the economic perspective, not just buying petrol and going out every day, but from the economic perspective, things are high. Everything is so terrible. It's all-time terrible when I put it that way. And then we're going to merge it with the global tariffs. Of course, we did touch on that during the paper headlines, talking about the tariff that have been meted on Nigeria, talking about from the US. And so all of these things, so the conversation will be basically economical. And to have this conversation with us this morning, we have our guest in the person of Mr. Daniel Effa. He is a business and global market analyst. So you already have your answers there. That is going to be an amazing conversation. Yeah. Good to have you on the show this morning.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for
You're ready for us?
Yes, let's go.
Okay, so I'm sure that you've been following the news. First of all, how did you receive the news of the removal of Melekari, first of all?
I think for me, I think it's long overdue. Why am I saying that is the fact that we've seen considerable level of reforms when it comes to the oil and gas sector. And even right before, as soon as the PIA was approved into law, right? And the Nnpc became a commercial organization as Nnpcl. It was expected that there should be a level of corporate governance change to reflect that change. And so for me, I think it was like maybe the president was looking at, okay, let's give him get a 2 year grace to show if you can carry on the reforms that we are trying to implement. So I think that it's for me long overdue, but at the end of the day, he was given the right time, number of artistic time to show that yes, you can get it done or not. And I think we have the answers to that basically.
Let's look at this very one by the side. Have we been able to attract investment so far since this whole PIA 2021 came into play? Have we been able to attract investment?
Yes, we have. I think about the figure was CBN was and the Nnpc figure about maybe 7 billion or thereabout now, because what we should understand is that the PIA, right, gave birth to us removing subsidy and so many other structural changes from the IOCs and all. So we've seen most of our local oil companies doing good numbers. We've seen them attract a lot of funds. So a lot of foreign portfolio investments you see coming to Nigeria. Some of them are going into those stocks, into the companies like Aradel, companies like Oando. They've seen considerable growth. So that is a win for us in terms of investment. However, the kind of investment we need for us to really start saying, yes, this sector will start giving us good yields, is still far from it. And that has to do with a lot of issues, including what's happening with the Nnpc, because Nnpc for us is like the Aramco, right, for Nigeria, and whatever the Aramco does is what determines what happens in South Africa and Saudi Arabia. And that is what it is for us too. So if we have an Nnpc that is well structured, that is doing business efficiently, foreign investment will easily just naturally come in, and that is basically where we are. That is why I'm happy that we're taking a new step in terms of saying, let's try new leadership. Any business you have, you get, and it's not working the way you should. You should change leadership and try
strategy.
Again. Exactly.
What if it is not a leadership problem? Yes, I do know that some persons have blamed Melekari for a lot. You seem to be among those who agree with it.
Okay, so let's try to get it clearly. Melekari is one of the most experienced Nnpcl GMDs we've had, because he has been in this space. He has
for about 33 years.
Exactly. And he has probably most of his work life has been in parastatals, in that same part. So he has worked at different levels of Nnpcl consortium. So he's actually one of the most experienced we've had. We've had others that we've had that were also technocrats were from private sector, right? So he was like, this is someone that has been in this space. However, this is the problem, because as at the time that Nnpc for maybe 10, 15 years ago, oil prices were very high. We were just cruising, making money, wasting money. But now it got to a point whereby oil prices became so low, right, that you needed the right leadership, efficient leadership, to begin to say we cannot continue to waste resources anymore. Let's try and start having proper, prudent way of managing resources. Then it became a problem because he thrived in a parastatal that was just anyhow. Government is that whether government of the day changes, things happen. You see subsidy payments go from 100 billion to over 4 trillion. Yeah, so when it became NNPCL, where now you have to start making money, we have to deliberately start making money, then that was where the problem lies. So for me, it is still a leadership problem, because then you cannot compare a leader leading an organization that's coming from a private sector that is efficiency driven, right? And the NNPC, for example, is trying to become public, trying to go public right now. You need first, what do you need to even do first? Is to even sort out your books. We've not been able to do that. Though many guys tried bringing up statements, audited statement from 2020 to 2022, 2021, 2023. But we saw the results, like, well, we have over 248 trillion in assets, right? NNPC assets, and these assets only yielded 3 trillion in profits. If you get a private business cannot run like that, it probably would have been bankrupt. Probably would have so many creditors that you can't continue the business. So you would need to look beyond that. It is not his fault. It's just like me saying I want to start a business and I'm trying to employ a permanent secretary or something. I will not get the result I'm looking for. I will look for someone that is a private that has worked in the private sector to give me that result. So it is not a function of whether it is good or not at his job, but it is where we are as a country in terms of what we are projecting for the future and what we're trying to achieve with the NNPCL at the moment. Yeah.
Okay. So it's not about him now. It's about the country where we are right now, and where we are. We need to make money. So the NNPC has been accused several times of dragging us into debt. You seem to like that part. They have been accused. Lots of Nigerians have complained about that. In fact, if we look at the history of the loans of the NNPCL, because I mean Mele Kyari has been there since 2019 when he was brought in by Buhari, the former president, and then from that time till 2025 now, we have records of $2 billion, we have record of $8.8 billion, we have record of $2.25 billion, we have several records of and we hear that as at now we have about 13.21 trillion naira in debt. How is this meant to be paid back?
So a lot of the debts that the NNPCL incurred, in fact, we start from the beginning. We didn't even know most of all these up until recently when the data came out. A lot of these debts were even forward sale contracts. So you instead of you're just basically betting on your crude oil production and getting cash in return. And most of all what these were used for, most of them were for subsidy payments, because for like 2 years or 3 years, we were not even getting FAC allocations. We're not getting money going to FAC from the NNPCL. So some of them was of subsidy. In fact, our share in Dangote refinery is also from a loan collected. Yes. So many of these issues, so many mismanagement here and there. There's nothing bad with the company, right? Obtaining loans. There's nothing bad with that.
20% stake in Dangote refinery.
Yeah, that was the initial plan, but we couldn't meet up basically because the demand of that 20% included supply of the products, right? So if we were very efficient in our delivery, for example, I remember before Mele Kyari came in, we were struggling around 1.5 million barrels, and we never really exceeded that up until he left. I think it was just recently we did about 1.8 million barrels with 200,000 in condensate. So we did not really, we were not really as efficient as we would have been. We were based on the fact that he witnessed some of he came in at $50 per barrel when it came in, crude oil prices. But apart from 2020, right? From 2020, late 2020 to 2025, he witnessed some of the highest prices of crude that we've witnessed in a while before 2019, right? The last time we had oil prices this high was in 2014, 2015, right? So he came in at a point whereby we could actually we have made a lot of money if we had produced more. In fact, at some point, we were losing 400,000 barrels a day under his leadership. So
this
yeah.
Sorry to cut you.
Yeah.
This loss that we're losing under his leadership.
Yeah.
Why were we having these losses? Is it pipeline vandalism?
Yes.
Is it
Yes.
unscrupulous elements, like they like to call it, which there was no record of, because we never for one day see anyone being paraded. So, okay, these are the people that we caught, you know, vandalizing the pipelines, stealing our crude and all of that. Now, there was a time, I think, sometime in 2023, thereabout, it was being said that some very powerful people were also siphoning the crude. We never heard
that anybody was actually arrested,
or if it was refunded or anything. Do you think that he was terrible at the job,
well,
or he was just playing?
So I think terrible might be an extreme word, but I think that he did not understand intricacies because now Nigeria is a very complex society, right? Even though a lot of what we call complex can be solved with technology, right? A lot of what we call complex is just about putting the right checks and balances there, right? Up until the president came in, and there was this deliberate crackdown on crude oil theft and all, and now we are less than 100,000 is being stolen daily from 400,000. So it's reflecting that really people can actually get their job done if there is someone is saying, please don't make this happen again. So I think that there was this level of freedom he had, maybe with the previous president, that I can get away with anything, and that's basically what happened. Not just him, the entire system. We saw subsidy payments that were not verified. We're told we're consuming over almost 100 million liters of petrol daily, and nobody gave us any audits. Nobody did any check. Nobody. Yes. They said at a point most of our petrol would leave the shores of the country. You get viral, and there was no conversation between the Nnpc and customs to stop that problem. Tankers, for God's sake, are not things. They move. That means you get. So these issues kept on happening, and that's why it's important that you change leadership. It is not in a single climb. Actually, some of these issues could have warranted a resignation, because if I'm not getting deliveries I'm expected to deliver to the people that employed me, I should be leaving the job. I'm not good on the job, but of course he stayed. And we are still where we are in terms of us not yet achieving what we really need to be achieving when it comes to the oil sector. The growth we are seeing in the oil sector in the last 2 years is a function of the reforms from the government and the private sector participation that has now increased, right? In the last 2 years, we've seen Nnpc refinery now coming up, you get, and producing very good value. We've seen new refineries coming, other refineries, for example. So we've seen so many private sector participation. That is what we can say, yes, it's now driving these numbers. But from the flagship player, the main player that is responsible for revenue for the country, is still lagging behind.
That is the Nnpc.
Exactly.
All right. So let's now look at some numbers who were giving credit to his name, because just this year, January, the president did praise him for, and I want to quote it, and so that's why for someone like me it came as a surprise to me, because this was just in January where the president did give credit to Mele Kyari and all that he has been doing, and he said, you mentioned the 1.8 million barrels per day, which was achieved sometime last year, and he did talk about how he has led, we now have the Port Harcourt refineries, we have the Warri refinery, which they said is working. We'll get to that. He was also praised to have said that he has led the unlocking of a total refining capacity of 117,000 barrels per day. with the operational takeoff of both the Warri and Port Harcourt refineries that took place in November, or kicked off in November and December 2024. He was also given the credit to say that after extensive rehabilitation, currently operates the Port Harcourt refineries operate at 70%, thus accounting for 42,000 barrels per day capacity, while the Warri refinery started operations, you know, at 60% capacity, translating to 75,000 barrels per day. So, for a man who was given all of this credit, what went wrong?
Okay, so first things first, the refineries. I think we spent over maybe $4 billion or $4.5 billion in terms of rehabilitating the refinery that was allocated from the previous administration, and up until now, like we still heard in December, January that we are still importing fuel.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So how then do you have a refinery that is working? I can give you get close to 117, according to what the president said, and we are still looking to import petrol. That is one, right? And I think that the president was basically motivating, motivating an employee to keep doing his job. However, remember that there was, in that same period, we still have a pending crude for Naira deal, which is one of the biggest issues that we've had in recent times pertaining to that sector. Why am I saying that? Dangote Refinery, for example, is like probably top 7 biggest refinery in the world, right? And it was set up on the back of an arrangement with the Nnpc that, don't worry, everything that will be refined here would be Nigerian crude.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward to 2023, 2024, when this business is saying, okay, all our arrangements. This was a Mele Kyari project because it was part of the conversations from the beginning. I remember the launching and everything there are so many press conferences that he gave that this would solve our problems of subsidies, our problems of supply issues when it comes to petroleum products. And when he came on board, this refinery was started and all, and the business came out and said that the Nnpc is reneging on his deal. 20% that should have been majorly supply issues and all. So when you look at the entire landscape of conversation, right? The president is praising him for, yes, we've made some level of
progress,
movement,
yes.
Right? But is this where we should be? 2 years down the line, 3 years, if we had when PIE was approved, 2 years down the line, we are still struggling with supply. We are still not maximizing value, right? In terms of, for example, now we have, based on calculations, we have almost a million barrels per day capacity in terms of local refineries, both Dangote refinery from NPCL, and the other modular refineries, right? So if we are going to that next level and we are still saying the snail movement is what we give up, but get us there. 2027 is almost here. What will be the president's president's achievement? And this is what I basically changed in this oil sector. Yes, apart from the fact that Nigerians are suffering petroleum prices extremely high, right? So it is that thought process that is making him feel, okay, I think it's high time. Because I've always said, as soon as he came in and said subsidy is gone, and you should have just replaced him with someone that's going to give us, because Nigerians are suffering 2 ways now. Number one, in the sense that subsidy has been removed, price of petrol is at an all-time high, right? But the money
sorry to cut you. But you keep saying this subsidy remove.
Yes.
A lot of Nigerians will be very angry with you if they keep hearing that.
Yes.
And that is because it doesn't feel as though it's been removed. Because now, I think, was it last year or so, we did hear a figure that, due to subsidy removal, this was what we made, about how many billion, was realized from subsidy removal. But what was that money used for?
That's another very separate conversation, because then this is the issue. Why am I saying that? And that is my own opinion. You
can say subsidy is being removed.
Yes. We
are right to so many billion, and yet we are going to collect loan. Exactly.
So that conversation now goes from the NNPCL to fiscal authorities. What are you doing with whatever is coming out from the Nnpc? Because now with the new leadership, there's most likely going to improve that again. What is happening? then Nigerians need to start asking questions, because I'm sure that by the time this president is going to be either campaigning or whatever, giving us his scorecard for what he has done so far, he should have told us, okay, this is what we realized from subsidy removal, which was one of the biggest moves we made, and this is what we improved in the lives of Nigerians. Of course, there are so many spokespeople that will come up and tell you this list of what they've done. But for me, what I tell myself is, in Nigerian on the streets, right, an argument on the street is, as your life improved, you get one way or the other since subsidy was removed. And most people will tell you no, right? You might be seeing different palliatives, support and all, but it is not going to really solve the real problems of inflation that this has caused, right? So back to what the president was talking about, the GMD, it was just to motivate him, right? And now, funny enough, most times you can sack someone not because the person is not doing his job, but because you are seeing someone else that can take you to the next level. And that is what I think this was. Because if you look at it one way or the other, yes, you see some failures, you see some successes from what he has done, but overall, we are seeing that we are not where we want to be, and that is the right move in terms of getting us private hands, because now the board of the Nnpc are experienced private sector guys.
Yes.
From Total, from
Shell,
so very experienced people, and that is what we need. So that kind of sector should be competing with the others, sorry, with the Aramcos of this world. We should be in conferences, and we are coming up with ideas to improve the oil sector along this side. That is how Nigeria is. We've always been a major voice in the oil sector, right? So how did we lose that spot over the last couple of years? We are the only country in the major, in the top 5, top 7 oil producers that are not on a budget surplus in the last 5 years, because from 2020, late 2020 up until now, we've averaged $75 per barrel for crude. So how come that we are still at in this same 5-year period, we've incurred the highest level of debt? What exactly is happening? And first, let's solve the NNPCL issue. Then we'll now go back to the fiscal authorities. What are we using
our monies for?
Exactly.
Don't you think that we have lost that position when it comes to countries who are exporting oil?
I think that yes, but based on numbers, no. But based on value obtained, yes, because most of what we now we do 1.8 million barrels, right? If you do calculations, over 500,000 barrels goes to our different loan obligations. So we still want to supply local refineries. So one way or the other, what we are making money from, on the IC is maybe like 800,000 barrels, 1 million barrels, when we should be making our quota from OPEC is 1.5 million. So that means that as it stands, we need at least 2.2 million barrels minus condensate to be able to say, yes, we are making money like the others in this space. All
right. Out with the old and new with the in. In with the new.
Exactly.
That's how they say it, right? So news broke out a few days ago about the removal of Mele Kyari, and of course the person who has already taken charge, which of course the president did say was immediately, he was to resume action immediately, Engineer Bashir Bayo Ojulare as the group CEO. What are your expectations, Mr. Efa? What are your expectations looking at the fact that this man comes from a very well-structured background? You know, he has achieved a lot, you know, in his career. He has a in-depth knowledge of the industry. What are we expecting? Let us look at a 3 to 6 months projection. What are we expecting? I mean, from an economic point of view.
Okay, so I know that one thing is a fact. In the next 3 to 6 months, the conversation around taking NNPCL public would be on the front burners.
Okay.
And for us to be able to achieve that, 2 things will happen. About one, our books, NNPCL books, needs to be worked on. I don't think it is wise to have 248 trillion naira in assets that only yield 3 trillion profits annually. That is wrong. First, I think that's one of the things that will happen. There will be a lot of divestment. There will be a lot of selling off so many of these assets. In fact, we can even sell off these assets and pay most of our loan obligations, right, and clear them off. You get that is one. Number 2 is on the front burner will definitely be oil production. Right, there will definitely be a conversations around oil production, because now with what's happening in River State, there are a lot of issues, and with someone that has already played in the private sector, knows most likely how to negotiate, communicate with the players, because as IOCs or as exploration companies, you definitely understand how to negotiate with the communities, negotiate with the different stakeholders in that space. So that is something that we know that we'll definitely gain from the board of the governance board and even the leadership of the NNPCL. Also, issues with the local refiners, right? I think that would also be on the front burner, and I think that we would see positive moves, because for the first time, Dangote Refinery, for example, that represents the major refiner in the country, would have a like mind.
I was about to ask you that.
Yeah, to negotiate with, right?
Yes.
So that alone is a good one, because if you're talking with someone that is profit-oriented or efficiency-oriented, the negotiations will be on a different level, and that is not from the old management to be on a different. So then we'll start seeing different conversations that would move us forward. Then also, we're also expecting, apart from the fact that I talked about the books, and we're also expecting what would happen next in terms of implementing more of the PIA Act. How do we, when we go public, are we letting go of some of the companies under the NNPCL to stand alone? What will be the relationship with the NNPCL and the NUPRC and others on other regulators in that space? Those are the things that I think that is on the front conversation for this new management. And in the next 3 to 6 months, we will definitely see a difference. We will see a difference. I'm not expecting them to perform magic, but I believe that the conversations would take a new turn, and the market will react to it. And whenever market sees a potential growth in something, you definitely see funds come through, right? So that is what we should be expecting next.
Yeah, when you say market reacts, there are some persons might be saying, Mr. Daniel, hope is not anything that would increase.
No. When I mean the market reacting, I'm talking about the growth of that sector in terms of the financial markets, in terms of you see more foreign portfolio investment coming into that space. For example, he is from the new GMD is from African Renaissance. We will see a lot of investment, because then you're expecting that you will see a lot of pro-business friendly moves, right? The same way with the US, for example, that the businesses were happy that with Trump coming in, there will be a pro-capitalist moves to help the local businesses. That is what will also happen here. You see more people, the businesses are happy that, okay, yes, now we have someone that is pro-business, then we can get a lot of more investment, more people will come in, more cash and everything. That will help us,
All right, so we are expecting to see enhanced regulatory effectiveness, which of course is part of the PIA. Attract investment, improve production, transparency.
Yeah, that is one. That is why going public has always been. I'm always having issues going public, because if we've not been able to achieve that level of transparency, nobody wants to invest, nobody wants to buy a share or a stock of a company that is not transparent, because then you don't know if the numbers they are showing you is correct.
Correct.
Exactly.
Okay. After talking about the new boss, now let's now look at the tariff. I just want you to touch a bit on the new Trump tariff.
Okay.
14% is what has been given to Nigeria. Some other countries got way higher than that. So we are so blessed to be having 14%. But then, like someone would say, we're just a small fry, you know, compared to other countries. How do you think this is going to affect us as a country?
I think that in terms of the grand scheme of things, we're not largely affected. What do we send to? What does the US send to us? Majorly automobiles, right? The reason why we are part of the tariff is because we export more than we import from the US. So everybody getting a tariff are people that the US has a negative net on, maybe apart from the UK, right? So I think what we should, of course, there's nothing we should do really. Like South Africa was really it, right? So they are going to be negotiating, but we don't really need to negotiate. We just need to look at it as a lesson for the next 10 years or 15 years as a nation. Why am I saying this? we grow at a 2% rate right now. So, and we have one of the youngest population in the world. By the next 10, 15 years, India will probably be the most populous country in the world by a mile, and Nigeria will probably be the most populous young nation in the world, right? That means that what we need to be doing right now is to ensure our people are able to consume. Our consumption level is high. If we can consume properly, because why the US is able to make that kind of move, sending tariffs across board, because it consumes $2.1 trillion of goods annually. And they are the biggest consumers in the world. So if your people, if you cannot get production to the level that we are now a producing country, at least let us be a proper consuming country. And how do we get there? By simply ensuring that inflation is driven very low. People can afford things. Bring in foreign direct investment, let people earn money, let people be able to earn more, right? See, as it stands in Nigeria, if you have a product, an essential product that is being sold for $100, it's about 150,000 naira. Less than 10 million people will be able to afford it without sweating. Less than of a population of over 200 million. Less than 10 million people will afford it. So that is the issue. So
we don't have buying consuming power.
Exactly. So that is what we need to do for the next 10 years. One is educating the young ones to be able to make money, right? To be able to because this is what China did in 2000. That they trained their people to be able to earn well, compete on a global level, and that will increase our consumption to be able to then in the next 10, 20 years. If someone comes up and brings up a tariff like this, you also kick back, right? Because you know that people are able to consume. You need us more than we need you, and that is what the US is doing. Because whether we like to, we are saying US will suffer. It is a lie. Why? Because 2.1 trillion from the global market, these businesses that are sending these goods there will suffer.
Don't you think that this is where block collaboration and block movement comes in? Because you were saying, okay, South, we are not really so affected. We just have 14%. South Africa has about how many? About 30 thereabout percent. So don't you think that instead of moving individually, we should move as a block? Because Lesotho is also there. We have other African countries that are there. So why don't we move as a block? And because our strength is in our numbers. I mean, the EU are moving as a block. They are not just moving one individually. So the Asian countries are also there moving together. So don't you think that if we move together, we'll be able to speak?
I honestly don't know why. Maybe it is strategically designed that African countries will not come together. I don't know why, because we've seen different leaders from the start of the OAU was to achieve this kind of block. Because then the EU started and it was very strong. Now the EU as a 27 nation, as a 27 member nation, are moving as a bloc.
Yes.
So I don't know why. We have an African Free Trade Agreement that has been on for the longest. Nobody's ratifying, everybody's just keeping quiet. Even in ECOWAS, there is West African sub-region, we still have countries that are still increasing tariff on each other. So there is a big problem with African countries. That is why at this point it will take serious leadership to be able to bring everybody together. One way or the other, whether it is designed, when I say it is designed, I mean countries in Asia, countries in the West, not wanting us to come together as a single market, because then they are sending more goods to us than we are sending to them. What we are sending to them is basically raw materials. They are taking back the value chain and making more money from us. So maybe they want that to keep going. That's why they don't want us to be together. But whichever way, it will take serious leadership on all sides for us to really come together and have a single block of African markets. That way, nobody would take. We have a large number, right? Even though
200 billion there.
Exactly. So that is. I don't know. It is something that I hope that African leaders are saying this and are thinking we can't allow this happen to us again. I hope that is what they are saying. But if it is not, if it is, let's go and solve your problem, then I think we'll still be where we are.
Apparently, it might just be let's go and solve your problem, because I mean our president hasn't really said much regarding to the tariff. We haven't heard much from other African countries. What we've been hearing more from are the people outside Africa. They are coming together. Already we hear that Canada has imposed their own 25% already. They're not wasting time.
And the effect on this, as I was saying, I was talking about at a different location. I said that, and that is already happening. For the oil sector, there would be issues. Tariffs would mean that we would see reserves of countries increasing, Canada, for example, and that would mean a crash in oil prices. And at least now, as at the time before I came onto the studio, oil prices were around $68 per barrel for Brent and about 65 for WTI. So that has always been the fear with Trump becoming president, because Trump has always saying he's going to drill more oil. He's going to so with these tariffs, trades will be restricted, markets will suffer. We've seen markets dropping value all across Asia, across the US, and this will keep happening until I don't think he wants to negotiate.
But if we are not able to do business, I'm just
yes.
asking,
yes.
if we are able to do business with the US, we have several hundreds of countries that we could do business with.
In fact, what we are selling to the US, I think it was Dangote that added what we're selling is basically crude oil. Dangote added aviation fuel recently and was exporting. I think what we are selling to the US is not. We can sell it to other people.
No, I'm referring to crude oil now. Yes.
So if you cannot sell to of course there are so many, but what happens is that if the flow stops, it is a flow. The market is not. It's not like everybody just buys, right? It's a market, right? Everybody knows their customers. If that flow stops, what happens is that we start seeing gluts here and there, and that is what brings down the prices.
Okay, so I'm still going to emphasize on that particular question, because I'm sure that there are persons who want to get clarity on the fact that, okay, fine, the US is proving like a stubborn boy right now, because this stubborn boy has power and is the head boy, and so okay, fine, you don't want to do business with us technically. It has not been said out loud, and these other people come together and say, okay, fine, let's do business with ourselves. The EU is there. This one is here. This one is here. Okay. They all have consuming powers as well, like the US. Wouldn't it be a good sell? Okay,
so I'm going to come to that question, but let me try and let us get it from the start, right?
Okay.
So the US was growing, explored its own resources to certain point. It became an issue, right? Started going to other countries to explore oil and find a way to get the oil in. So the whole idea of globalization from the angle of the US was to create cheap product for the American people. Then it got to a point that it became more expensive to even have business in the US. You see companies like Apple would go and set up shop in Taiwan, in China, in Mexico, then import those things, right? That was what led to where we are now. So much so that now this particular country is now a major player of every other persons in terms of exports, right? China does over 400 billion, and US only sends about 100 billion. Mexico about the same number. The EU 27 about 300 billion, right? So when you say we start doing business with ourselves, when will that happen? Because that is taking 2.1 trillion from the total markets, total trade that happen, that you send across. So this is what happens when suddenly there's tariffs and people, the Americans are not prefer to consume their own product instead of that because it is expensive. For example, a very good example is electric cars. Electric cars in China average about $16,000, right? They added the tariff in January of about 20%. Now 30%, that's around 50%. If you have 50% to 16,000, we're still around maybe $25,000 or thereabout for EVs, for electric vehicles. An average Tesla goes up for about $35,000 to $40,000, right? So either way, right, you can see the markets that China would be losing. So because then what happens is that if there is a tariff and people are no longer buying, suddenly that business will start having issues. Either it's collapsed. For example, there are some of these businesses, India, for example, is going to negotiate. Why? Because a lot of the export of India are from businesses that are labor intensive.
But everyone cannot use a Tesla.
Of course.
Not all the Americans. Yes, so the Americans have the consuming power.
Yes,
we agree.
Yes.
But they cannot totally because when you talk to American people, when you see their reaction to some of these things,
Trump is doing,
they are telling you
they are pissed at it.
We cannot survive on our own.
Yes.
I don't want to be driving a Tesla all through my life. I don't want to have that. I don't want that to be my only option. So the American people are scared of not having enough options. So
at this point, it's a 90-day approach. When I say that 90 days, because then it's even for the US. What's the word? The Federal Reserve Chairman Powell has always said that this will be imported inflation. This will lead to this will take back the inflation gains they're already making. About 2% target. They're close to it, but now with this, it's probably go back to 4% or 5% in the next quarter. Now, but however, because these businesses there, this is Trump's end game. Trump's end game is most of all these companies come and set up shop here. Instead of we can take your businesses, come and set up shop here and produce it here and we consume it here.
Okay.
That is the end game. And that's why we saw, was it a company in Vietnam did about 500, how many $1 billion investment you get in the US, and it was all publicized and all. So that's the end game. When we start seeing countries make those moves, it will definitely relax the tariff. So for me, if I'm thinking from an American point of view, I think it's the right thing to do. Or else it gets to a point whereby America's goods are not even not interested, but they want to keep bringing the goods to your country. You need to protect your economy, because now the American economy needs to keep growing. It is struggling. It is losing ground to China, and India is coming up, right? So either way, you need to make a move, whether it is arms twisting, whether it is conversations, make a move to guarantee something. It might look as if it is wicked, but the end game is what the end justify the means, basically. Okay,
you said enough, and our time is running very fast. There's one particular question I was wanting to just touch in about 1 or 2 minutes. I don't know. I think yes, we have a little time for that. What would be your final say if there is one thing you want to tell the new Nnpc boss? What would be that one thing that you just want to tell him that would drive our economy? Because right now we just want something that would take our economy to just alleviate our stress, our struggle.
Okay, so if I'm going to be speaking directly to the Nnpc new boss, I'll be telling him that he knows how this space works. This is not a new industry to him. However, he might not know how it works from the point of the Nnpc, because then as he enters, you start seeing the issues, right? But one thing that is key to whatever he's planning to do in the next couple of years, at least 5 years, is that he needs to get market confidence. He needs to get market confidence in the sense that whatever the activities of the Nnpc, it should show a lot of transparency, should show a deliberate approach to solving issues, right? Should show the efficiency. If all those 3 things are there, markets would suddenly react positively to whatever you're doing. If you are transparent, for example, you get the crude for Naira deal done, right? If you are transparent, you tell us what the problem is when it comes to why we are not producing as much as we should be producing. Because if you need to ramp up production, the issues with Ogoni people, for example, it's an issue that Shell, they've had the recommendations for the longest. Have a conversation with them. Let's start solving the issue so we can increase our production to 2.5 million barrels. So it is basically transparency, and that's always been the issue with Nnpc. We don't believe anything they say. In fact, we will hear a story that Nnpc is the person from Malta. Nnpc will deny it. Then it comes out to say, okay, yes, we have been doing this. So that is the problem. So we need that transparency first to restore the confidence of the market back to that fact that, okay, Nnpc, yeah, this is a new leadership and they're planning to do a good job. That is the start, and everything will basically follow. All right. And just before you go, something on the dollar. We were hearing some reports sometime last year that some countries are planning to move away from the dollar. Do you? I think they are just. I think it's just. It's all this kind of conversations always happen. Dollar is still the king.
But how can it still be the king? How will it remain the king when other countries say, okay, fine, we're going to be trading with our own currency. We're going to be magnifying our currency more. And so if you want to do business with us, let's do it this way.
Okay, good.
Because every country wants to look out for themselves.
Yes. Actually, that is basically what's happening right now. And one of those things that would kill that idea of let's do business with other currencies apart from dollar is these tariffs. Why? Because then when your tariff is eating your local businesses from being able to export to their major market in quotes, you will start having to discuss with the US government, which includes you setting up a business there. And are you not going to do it in dollars? Well, let's see how it goes. Everything is all about let's see how it works. So we're going to give them, let's say, in the next 2 weeks, because some are saying, okay, they're not responding now until they see the body language of Trump, and if he's not shifting Trump ground, then they bring their own, they reply. He's the most funny person to check for body language. He will tell you it is no, it is no. He basically just come up to it and tweet about the country and just laugh about the country. So it's either if you are going to go for tariff for tariff, go for tariff for tariff. If you are going to negotiate, go and negotiate. Don't don't say we are talking. See France. France is everybody has been scamping. You, for example, is suffering the most. Asia, China, South Korea, and Japan have come together to say we are going to see what we can do to tackle this issue. EU is suffering from low consumption. They have an aging population. The economy is struggling. Their businesses are not performing well. So they are not, and they should be assuming in the EU of 20 years ago. This should not have happened. It wouldn't be. They would have been tariff for tariff, but now you can't do that. So there are so many.
Tariff for tariff.
Africa is also not. You get, so the only people that would say tariff for tariff is Canada, for example. Not even Mexico, because if Mexico tries it, they will suffer, right? Because a lot of people. I
think that Africa, we have the numbers to say tariff for tariff.
We don't have the capacity.
But we have the consuming number. But we don't have the consuming ability.
Yes, about about a month ago, when US stopped its aid, the whole USAID, yes, everybody's campaigning about. So you can imagine.
No, that's a different thing. That's
so
health.
You can imagine.
Health.
That gives you the answer to that question.
You and I know that when it comes to health, I mean, when it comes to funding for health projects, we rely so much on these guys. But I think it's about, like you said, the consuming. We have the consuming number, but we don't exactly have the consuming power. Yeah. So these are two separate things that we need to work on. But we've had so much nice conversation this morning. Let me give you a high five. Thank you so much, Mr. Efa, for coming through on the show and having this great conversation with us. This is where we draw the curtain for this morning. And of course, we wrap up for this week. I hope you've had a great time with me from Monday through Friday. It's time to go and observe rest and prepare and get ready for meeting you on Monday. You know, I always want to meet you in my best of mood. All right. So till I come your way on Monday morning, stay true to yourself and be good. Don't forget that you can follow us on our social media platforms on Facebook, on Instagram, and we, guess what, are now on X. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, and of course, you can move around with us everywhere on our website, www.rbnradiotv.com. My name is Cynthia Agbo. You can also find me on your social media platform as well, and keep seeing